In a dimly lit room, a boy sat hunched over his computer, fingers dancing across the keyboard as he immersed himself in the vibrant worlds of video games. For a decade, this digital realm had been his sanctuary, a place where he could escape reality. But as dawn broke the next day, he reluctantly left his virtual adventures behind and trudged downstairs for lunch. At the table, his mother's voice cut through the silence. "Have you found a job yet?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Your father won't be able to work forever. What's your plan for when we're no longer around?" Her words struck him like a cold wave, and frustration bubbled to the surface. "You're being annoying," he snapped, his voice laced with anger. She sighed, reminding him of his constant assurances. "You always say, 'I've got it,' but nothing ever changes." Feeling cornered, he pushed his chair back and stood up, declaring he'd lost his appetite. As he stormed away, a nagging guilt gnawed at him. Deep down, he knew he was overreacting. After graduating from high school, he had enrolled in an average university, and while things had seemed manageable at first, the tide had turned against him. Despite his best efforts to secure a good job before graduation, he faced a string of rejections that drained his motivation. Friends began to share their success stories, boasting about job offers, while he felt like a ghost, fading into the background. Ignoring their questions, he retreated to his room, where his mother's mention of their neighbor, a man with a thriving career and a charming child, only deepened his sense of inadequacy. Just then, a knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. He opened it to find a courier holding a small package. His heart raced. What could it be? His mother approached, curiosity piqued. "Are you buying things even though you don't have any money?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. No, I probably won a prize again," he replied quickly, trying to mask his embarrassment. He had entered countless online giveaways, hoping to distract himself from the weight of his unemployment. But sometimes, the prizes were less than appropriate for a young man living with his parents. As he signed for the package, he caught the courier's eye, noticing a strange look on the man's face. Was it odd for a boy in his 20s to be home alone on a weekday? Glancing around, he saw neighbors peering at him with a mix of curiosity and judgment. The parcel was small, and his mother glanced at it, wondering if it contained food before walking away. He retreated to his room, heart pounding, and opened the package. Inside, he found a note and a disc labeled Village of Fate. Intrigued, he wondered if this was yet another game. As he unfolded the note, his heart raced with anticipation. It revealed that he had been selected to test a groundbreaking game, Village of Fate. The note boasted that this game utilized the latest AI technology, claiming to create characters that could think and act like real humans. Skeptical, he raised an eyebrow at the exaggeration, but continued reading, intrigued. The rules were peculiar. One stipulation demanded he promise not to share any details about the game online. It felt more like a vague contract than a formal agreement. Another rule caught his attention. He had to remain connected to the internet while playing, and if any villagers died, he would lose access to the game forever. That seemed a bit harsh, even for a game. Curiosity piqued. He searched for Village of Fate online but found no results. A flicker of doubt crossed his mind. What if this game was a virus-laden trap? To play it safe, he decided to test it on his old PC. If it turned out to be a prank, he could always share the story as a hilarious cautionary tale on Reddit. With a deep breath, he inserted the disc. The title, Village of Fate, flashed on the screen, and he pressed enter to start. The first scene unfolded before him, and he was instantly captivated by the stunning high-definition graphics, better than anything he had ever seen. Villagers rode in a carriage, but their journey was abruptly interrupted by a horde of menacing monsters. His heart raced as he watched a girl clutching a holy book, fervently repeating, "God of Fate," as if praying for salvation. He instinctively moved his cursor, fearing for the villagers' lives. Just then, the man driving the carriage sprang into action, attempting to defend it. A brilliant light erupted from the holy book, engulfing the screen in a blinding glow. When the light faded, the scene shifted to the villagers joyfully conversing in a serene forest. This, he realized, was where the real game would begin. Hovering over the characters, he discovered their backstories. The carriage driver was named Gams, a 26-year-old swordsman, while the girl with the holy book was Kem, a 19-year-old priestess, and Gam's younger sister. He noted their contrasting appearances and wondered if the game had been developed in Japan, marveling at the high production quality. His curiosity deepened as he explored the other characters, all of whom belonged to the same family. Intrigued, he began searching for the game's controls. But he soon noticed that the dialogue was presented in text rather than voice. In the game, Gams apologized to his companions, explaining that it was his duty to protect the village, yet during the monster attack, all he could do was provide them a chance to escape. Carol, his little sister, eagerly asked about the mysterious light they had witnessed. Kem, the other sister, chimed in, revealing that Gams was her big brother. The boy playing the game found himself drawn to Gams. Handsome, strong, and surrounded by a beautiful family, it was clear Gams was the main character. As the siblings interacted, Gams scolded Kem for treating Carol too lightly, prompting a giggle from the younger sister. The boy couldn't help but smile. He was genuinely enjoying the game, captivated by the characters' personalities and their rich backstories. Layla and Rhodus, the other characters, also pondered the source of the light. Kem explained that it had emanated from the Bible she held. Just then, a new instruction appeared on the screen. He was now tasked with writing a prophecy for the villagers every day. He had become the god of the game, responsible for guiding the villagers toward prosperity. As he read through the instructions, a wave of disbelief washed over him. The complexity of the rules initially baffled him. He assumed the game might only recognize simple sentences or keywords, so he decided to test it with a straightforward prophecy. If the AI could grasp even a fraction of what he wrote, it would be nothing short of revolutionary. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, he typed out his prophecy and pressed enter. A radiant light emanated from the Bible in Kem's hands as she opened it, her voice ringing out as she read, "We have received a prophecy from the god of fate." The villagers erupted in excitement, their faces lighting up with hope. Since only Chem could read, they eagerly urged her to share the prophecy's contents. With a flourish, Chem relayed his words, commanding them to harvest trees and secure a place to live, all phrased in a poetic manner. The boy leaned back in his chair, stunned. He hadn't anticipated such a seamless response. Watching the characters comprehend and react to his input left him in awe. He could hardly believe such technology existed. For a moment, he wondered if the characters were merely following pre-programmed scripts. But as he observed them discussing their plans to harvest trees and establish a shelter, he realized this was something far more sophisticated. Rhodus, one of the villagers, pointed out that, while they could cut down trees, they wouldn't be able to use the wood as timber immediately. It needed time to dry. Kem's eyes widened in surprise, and the boy felt a jolt of astonishment. He hadn't known that either. Rhodus patiently explained the drying process, and Kem, feeling a twinge of guilt, admitted she hadn't researched it beforehand. The boy shared her sentiment, realizing he was just as uninformed. "Don't worry," Rhodus reassured them. "There must be a reason behind God's plan. We can cut down the trees and let them dry." With renewed determination, the villagers gathered their tools and set off toward the trees to begin their work. As he watched, the boy noted that Gams and Rhodus took charge of the harvesting while the girls scoured the area for edible plants. He discovered he could use the scroll wheel on his mouse to zoom in and out of the scene. Zooming out, he spotted a long, narrow path in the distance, likely the route they had taken to escape in the carriage earlier. His mind raced with possibilities. How could he progress in the game? Was it truly running in real time? The thought seemed impossible for a game of this caliber. Just then, a notification about fate points appeared on the screen. These points were awarded based on how indebted the villagers felt to him, the god of fate. He noticed he currently had 97 points, which could be used to perform miracles. The instructions revealed that the more residents he had, the more fate points he would earn, and ensuring the villagers' happiness would further increase his score. Intrigued, he perused the list of miracles he could perform. Some options included helping the escaped villagers reunite or summoning a traveling peddler or doctor. He realized he could influence their fates, though not control them directly. However, he could manipulate the weather, which made him feel powerful, almost like a deity. Unsure of how to best allocate his limited points, he decided to eavesdrop on the villagers' conversations. He scrolled over to Gams and Rhodus, noticing that Rhodus was trying to engage Gams, who seemed unusually quiet. Curious about the girls' discussion, he shifted the screen to them and overheard their talk about food. The villagers mentioned they only had enough provisions for 2 weeks, and he pondered summoning a peddler to help them acquire more supplies. He thought about instructing Gams to investigate the area tomorrow, but hesitated. Sending their only fighter away from the group felt risky. Instead, he considered sending Carol, who wasn't actively contributing, to explore and expand their visible territory. Just then, Carol picked up a mushroom, and Leah quickly warned her to drop it, exclaiming it was poisonous. Watching the villagers prepare for sleep, the boy felt a pang of anxiety. If his careless actions led to their downfall, he would carry that guilt with him. Desperate to help, he scanned the list of miracles and spotted one called Familiar. Perhaps summoning a companion could expand the visible area of the map. But as he read the cost, 300 fate points, his heart sank. That was far beyond his current means. Lowering his head, he felt the weight of pressure settle on him. Just then, he noticed a payment system that could grant him fate points, 10 points for every 1,000 yen. Frustration bubbled within him. As a NEET, he wasn't earning any money. He calculated that if he spent 20,000 yen, he could finally acquire a cat or dog. With enough fate points, he could ensure the villagers lived comfortably. But when he checked his bank account, reality hit hard. He had only 10,852 yen. A flicker of determination ignited in him. Perhaps he could sell his books, games, and unopened prizes online to raise some cash. After contemplating this, he returned his focus to the game, noticing the villagers were settling down for the night. At 9 p.m., Rhodus asked Gams why he wasn't going to bed. Gams replied, "Someone has to stay awake in case a monster appears." Rhodus reassured him, "With the power of God, no monsters will come near us." The boy felt a swell of pride mixed with anxiety. The villagers placed so much trust in him. But deep down, he knew he didn't possess such powers. He considered telling them that their god had limitations, but feared that doing so might shatter their faith in him. As he observed the villagers, he began to reflect on the process of wood manufacturing in the game. It struck him how long it had been since he had paid attention to anything meaningful. Lately, his life revolved around mindless entertainment, watching videos or scrolling through funny posts on Reddit. If only he weren't a NEET, he thought. Perhaps he could provide the villagers with a better, more comfortable life. Suddenly, he stood up, feeling a wave of regret wash over him. Why was he allowing a game to evoke such strong emotions? Games were meant to be an escape, not a source of guilt. As he sat back down, a sharp pain shot through the scar on his stomach, dragging him back to a painful memory. He recalled the day his little sister had been in danger, the fight that ensued, and the boy who had stabbed him. In that moment of chaos, he had left something important behind, and that was when everything began to unravel. With sadness clouding his eyes, he rose from his chair, realizing he had sought refuge in gaming because he felt lost, as if there was nothing else left for him to do. The next morning, he awoke to the bright light of day streaming through his window. Memories of last night's research on wood manufacturing flooded back, but he had fallen asleep without even realizing it. Checking the time, he was surprised to see it was 7 a.m. He couldn't remember the last time he had woken up this early. He walked over to his computer and was struck by the sight of the villagers already up and working. It dawned on him that their lives unfolded in real time. Thoughts of what kind of prophecy he should give them next swirled in his mind, but his stomach growled, interrupting his train of thought. Suddenly aware of his hunger, he remembered he hadn't eaten dinner the night before. Too engrossed in the game. Glancing around his room, he spotted empty snack wrappers. He had finished them all. With a sigh, he headed downstairs, hoping to find something left in the fridge. As he approached the kitchen, he heard the familiar voices of his family, gathered around the dining table, sharing breakfast. Since the incident with his younger sister, he had had a huge argument with his father about finding a job, and they hadn't spoken directly since. For a fleeting moment, he considered walking in, greeting them with a smile, and asking if he could join them for breakfast. But the thought felt ridiculous. They were all fueling themselves for the day ahead, working hard. Feeling the weight of his situation, he turned away from the kitchen and retreated to his room. How could he face his family when he had no job and nothing to show for himself? Instead, he decided to channel his frustration into something productive. He began doing muscle exercises, recalling the moment he had run away in fear and the lingering weakness that still haunted him. As he trained, he glanced at his computer screen and saw Carol working alongside the other villagers. They appeared happier than he felt, even if it was just a game. A wave of guilt washed over him. Despite being virtual, they were living more fulfilling lives than he was. Determined to temper their expectations, he decided to warn them not to place too much faith in an incompetent god like him. He crafted the day's prophecy, and when Kem announced it, the villagers gathered around her, buzzing with excitement. But as she read his words, a heavy silence fell over the group. Anxiety gripped him. Had he disillusioned them? Regret washed over him. But then Kem broke the silence, praising how wonderful it was that their god was still watching over them. Rhodas chimed in, suggesting that perhaps their god had lost some powers due to battles against the devils. To his surprise, the villagers took the prophecy positively, and his fate points increased to 110. However, he quickly realized that the points were accumulating too slowly. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to provide them with a better life anytime soon. He overheard the villagers discussing how uncomfortable it was to sleep in the wagon and their urgent need for a defensive wall to protect themselves from monsters. Listening to their struggles, he wished he had more fate points to help them. But he couldn't afford to waste the few he had. The only way to earn more fate points was through the in-game payment system. He had already listed his unopened items for sale and expected to make 20,000 to 30,000 yen from them. He glanced at his collection of books, contemplating selling them to a store for extra cash. The problem was, he hadn't ventured outside in months. But he knew that if he didn't make these sacrifices, the villagers could be utterly defeated, and he would lose the chance to play the game again. After weighing his options, he steeled himself and decided to go outside. He put on some decent clothes, realizing they fit him well, despite his lack of growth since childhood. He had always imagined growing into a more refined adult in his 30s, thinking it would happen naturally. Now, he promised himself he would continue the game tomorrow. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed Carol in the game fall and injure herself. A pang of sadness struck him as he watched her struggle. Yet despite her injury, she gathered her wood sticks and pressed on. He also noticed that the other villagers looked tired, realizing that today had been particularly tough for them. Determined to do his best, he grabbed his bag of books and headed for the door. His mother, surprised to see him, asked if he was heading out and what was going on. He simply replied, "I'll be back soon." Taking his bicycle, he hit the road, feeling the stares of passers-by as they judged him. But thoughts of the villagers propelled him forward, and he pedaled faster until he reached the bookstore. Once inside, he scanned the shelves, hoping to find a book that might help him manage the villagers better. He spotted a book about different worlds, but quickly realized it didn't quite match the game's situation. Plus, he couldn't afford to buy anything new after selling his old books. Stepping outside, he noticed a bakery he used to visit with his family. On a whim, he decided to go in and treat himself. He bought 4 puddings and headed back home. When he handed them to his mom, she smiled and asked if they were for her. "I got enough for everyone," he replied, quickly rushing to his room, feeling a bit embarrassed. He chastised himself for feeling proud over such a small gesture, wondering what he was doing with his life at his age. After spending 20,000 yen, he finally had 310 fate points. He watched as the villagers cooked dinner and sat together, pondering what kind of miracle he should use next. There was a feature that allowed him to review their past conversations, but he hesitated, feeling uneasy about it, like eavesdropping on their private moments. Despite his reservations, he decided to test the feature. When he clicked on it, he was suddenly immersed in the conversations from earlier that day. The villagers were chatting about the pleasant weather, and Layla mentioned her desire to bathe in the river. Kem quickly pointed out that there were many men around, to which Layla winked, and joked that she wasn't too worried about being seen. After all, both her husband and daughter were used to it. She teased that Gams wouldn't be interested in the body of an old lady like her, adding that Carol wouldn't mind if Gams saw her either. Listening to their banter, he felt a wave of relief. Perhaps he didn't need to worry too much about Layla or Carol. However, Kem's brother complex was definitely more serious than he had anticipated. Suddenly, he caught wind of a more serious topic. Layla was expressing concern about the swarm of monsters that had attacked their village, mentioning how the villagers had scattered in the blink of an eye. Yoshio, another villager, seemed confused, wondering what she was talking about. As he continued to listen, he learned they were referring to a village made of magnificent stone. Curiosity piqued. He gathered more information and discovered that there had once been nearly 100 villagers. After the monster attack, they had all been forced to flee, escaping on horse-drawn wagons, much like the ones they were traveling in now. That's when it clicked for him. The purpose of the miracle, reunite villagers, was to bring together those who had escaped and been separated. Just as he was contemplating how to reunite them, his mother called out from downstairs, announcing that dinner was ready. He reluctantly left his game and made his way to the dining room, where he was surprised to find his father sitting at the table. It was unusual to see him home this early. Ever since he had become a NEET, they had only crossed paths a few times each month. He attempted to strike up a conversation, but his father seemed disinterested. Instead, he asked if Saki, his younger sister, was working overtime. Unlike him, Saki was hardworking and had successfully entered the field she wanted. She often said that working late didn't bother her at all. Their mother then mentioned that she had received some handmade sukmono from Okiku, and asked if he wanted to try some. She explained that the weather had been nice, so she took a short walk in the park, where she ran into Okiku, an elderly landlady who lived in a large old house nearby. As a child, he remembered her often bringing them candy. In that moment, he realized that the only reason he hadn't been kicked out of the house, despite being a NEET, was because his father worked hard and had a stable income. After finishing his meal, he thanked his parents and stood up. His mother urged him to take a pudding with him and asked his father if he would like some dessert too. His father, sounding uninterested, replied that he would have some. Disappointed, he returned to his room and checked on the villagers in the game. He noticed that everyone except Gams had gone to the horse wagons. Gams stood out as a dependable figure, exuding a quiet strength reminiscent of his own father. Kem could use healing magic, but she wasn't suited for battle, so both she and the villagers relied heavily on Gams. There was an option to summon more people, but it cost too many points. A cheaper alternative was to summon a random person, but that felt risky. What if the random person turned out to be a criminal or someone dangerous? He decided it was wiser not to take that gamble. He also wanted to save points for a familiar, so he figured it was better to hold off on summoning anyone for now. Realizing how much stress this game was causing him, he thought it would be best to sleep and figure things out in the morning. Just as he was about to rise from his chair, a notification suddenly popped up. Attack! His heart raced as he quickly alerted everyone to wake up. Kem, sounding stressed, asked what was happening. Gams responded firmly, "Monsters are attacking. Everyone, stay in the wagon and don't leave under any circumstances." "Stay inside the wagon," Rodas instructed his wife and daughter, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Gams remained calm, reassuring everyone that he would handle the situation. He turned to Kem, asking her to be ready with her healing magic if needed. Yoshio felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. The darkness enveloped the area, making it impossible to see where the monsters lurked. Suddenly, two stray dogs appeared, their growls echoing in the night. Yoshio knew Gams was strong, but it was 2 against 1, and his anxiety spiked. He considered using a miracle for help, but before he could act, the monsters lunged at Gams. With fierce determination, Gams fought back, wielding his sword with precision. He managed to kill both dogs, but the victory came at a cost. Exhausted, he slumped onto a log, breathing heavily. Kem rushed toward him, a smile on her face, but it quickly faded when Gams suddenly collapsed. The villagers froze in shock. "Gams!" Yoshio shouted, panic rising in his chest. It hadn't been a flawless victory after all. Kem knelt beside her brother, tears streaming down her face as she held him in her arms, crying out in desperation. "Gams, please, don't leave me." Outside the screen, Yoshio felt helpless, trying to comprehend the unfolding tragedy. Rodas checked Gam's pulse, his expression turning grave. "He's getting cold," Kem cried, her voice trembling with fear. "Is there any antidote magic you can use?" Rodas asked urgently. Yoshio's heart raced. Surely Kem's healing magic would fix everything. But then Chem's voice broke through his hope. "I haven't learned antidote magic yet." Desperation clawed at Yoshio as Rodas frantically searched their supplies. "Do we have any antidotes?" Gam shook his head weakly, indicating they had none. Carol stood in shock, unable to process the reality of the situation. Kem, still sobbing, begged her brother not to leave her. In her desperation, she shouted at the heavens, pleading for help to save Gams and promising she would do anything. Yoshio's heart raced. If Gams died, everything would be over. Clenching his fists, he reminded himself that he was the god in this game. He recalled an option to reverse the situation and frantically searched for it. Instead, he stumbled upon a miracle called Traveling Doctor Shows Up, which cost 300 fate points. He hesitated, debating whether to use it. What if the doctor didn't arrive in time? It felt like a gamble. Suddenly, his mother yelled from downstairs, telling him to quiet down. Realizing how loud he had been, he thought about how suspicious it might seem if a doctor showed up in the middle of the night. After a moment of deliberation, he made his decision. He would use the miracle. In an instant, a traveling doctor appeared in the village. Kem, shocked and angry, demanded to know who he was. The doctor, calm and collected, introduced himself as a traveling physician. Yoshio smiled, thinking it was natural for them to be suspicious. To ease their concerns, he revealed the prophecy, and Kem, surprised by the late-night message, read it with heartfelt gratitude toward God. The doctor then approached Gams, asking to examine him. Everyone watched anxiously as he pulled out an antidote and applied it to Gams's wound. Slowly, Gams began to feel better. His pain faded, and his body temperature returned to normal. Relief washed over the villagers, and joy filled the air as they witnessed Gam's recovery. Feeling much more relaxed, Yoshio wondered whether the doctor was male or female. Meanwhile, Rodas began reading the prophecy aloud. In it, Yoshio had explained how he guided the doctor to them, and reminded them that although their struggles would continue, they should never forget that their God was watching over them. As he listened to the villagers' happy expressions, Yoshio felt a swell of reassurance. Perhaps he had done a good job after all. The next day, the girls were busy gathering ingredients for their meals while Rodas practiced with his sword, determined to protect everyone. Suddenly, a rabbit rustled through the bushes, startling Rodas and causing him to stumble and fall. Meanwhile, the doctor was occupied preparing herbs for Gam's treatment when Kem approached him. "Why did you come this way?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. The doctor explained that his family had been doctors for generations. "This place, known as the Forbidden Forest, is full of monsters, but it's also rich in herbs," he said. The previous night, after finishing his herb gathering and preparing to set up camp, he had seen a bright light in the distance. At first, he hesitated to approach it, but eventually he decided to follow the light. Kem smiled, interpreting the event as divine guidance. "It must have been God's guidance," she said. The doctor chuckled softly. "While we value nature above all and don't particularly believe in God, it could have been an act of God," he replied, revealing his agnostic stance. He acknowledged the possibility of a higher power, but didn't fully embrace it. "Will you be leaving soon?" Kem asked, her tone hopeful. "I can't abandon my patient," the doctor replied. "Even though the worst part is over, I'd like to stay a bit longer if you'll allow it." His big smile was infectious, and Kem readily agreed, saying he could stay as long as he liked. However, she mentioned their lack of proper shelter at the moment, and asked if he was okay with that. Yoshio smiled, pleased that the doctor would remain with them, but he also recognized the issue. With the doctor's presence, the wagon was now full, meaning someone would have to sleep outside. Even though Gams had been saved, it would still take a few days for him to fully recover. Yoshio began to consider how to use his fate points wisely to improve their situation. Suddenly, the doctor mentioned a nearby cave, a ruin left by miners. It would provide shelter from the wind and rain, and we might even find some leftover tools there," he explained. Yoshio felt a wave of relief wash over him. The doctor's knowledge could be invaluable. "Can you lead us to the cave?" Rhodus asked excitedly. "It's only about 5 minutes away," the doctor replied, and Yoshio felt a surge of hope. They could easily return later to gather more wood if needed. When they finally arrived at the cave, they were greeted by a large door. The doctor explained that this door was likely used for transporting goods, indicating it was the main entrance to the mining area. As they opened the door, everyone was astonished by the massive space inside. It was much larger than Yoshio had expected, and although it was a bit dirty, several rooms were scattered throughout. The villagers were so absorbed in exploring their new home that they hardly noticed the doctor. Kem had gently placed Gams on a bed, holding his hand and whispering that they had safely arrived in a new land. Nearby, spring water flowed, and there were areas suitable for cooking. The girls were eager to start cleaning the place. Feeling eternally grateful to the doctor for helping them find shelter, Yoshio watched as Chem went outside and asked everyone to be quiet so they wouldn't wake Gams. She suggested they clean the area to surprise him when he woke up. "Rhodus, take out anything that's useless," Layla instructed, and Rhodus nodded, agreeing to put the discarded items in a corner while they cleaned. Carol suddenly noticed the 4 rooms and, with a bright smile, exclaimed, "I'll make Big Brother Gam's room mine. 1 bed will be enough because I'll sleep with him." Kem, watching from behind, wondered why Gams would share his room with Carol instead of her. She thought to herself that Gams had spoiled Carol a little too much. Yoshio felt a twinge of concern about the relationship between Carol and Kem, but he figured they generally got along well as fellow villagers. As he surveyed the cave, he realized they had the potential to turn it into a livable place and finally start building a village. It was already noon, and he suddenly realized he hadn't eaten anything yet. Feeling hungry, Yoshio decided to grab something to eat. Just as he left his room, he was startled to see his sister, Saoki, emerging from hers. "Are you on holiday?" he asked, surprised. "I just want to go downstairs to eat," she replied, her tone sharp as she pushed past him. "Move aside." He felt a surge of anger at her attitude. "I'm going to the first floor too," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But she warned him not to use the bathroom there. Her words stung, and he felt a familiar frustration rise within him. Ever since that incident, their relationship had changed, and he couldn't shake the feeling of loss. He didn't respond, merely assuring her that he wouldn't use it. After eating, he returned to his room, thoughts of his sister swirling in his mind. He remembered how close they used to be, often going out together to relax and enjoy each other's company. He wondered if they would still share that bond if the incident hadn't happened. A sharp pain gripped his stomach as he realized he had to move on. Regret lingered, but he knew there was nothing he could do to change the past. Determined to distract himself, he decided to check on the villagers. As he entered the main area, he noticed they had cleaned the cave remarkably well. Rhodus was asking Layla where Kem was, and she replied that Kem was checking in on Gams. Carol piped up, expressing her desire to join Chem, but Rhodus gently told her to leave them alone for a while. With a smile, he suggested that she stay with him and join him on an expedition to explore the cave. Carol agreed, saying that once her big brother got better, she would give him a tour. Just then, Kem entered the room and approached the doctor. "Can I take care of my brother?" she urged, her voice filled with concern. The doctor agreed, noting that the symptoms from the poison had settled down. He instructed her to summon him immediately if anything unusual happened. Kem thanked the doctor and took Gam's hand, reassuring him that she was there for him. Yoshio felt a swell of happiness as he saw Gam's condition improving. Suddenly, a dream box appeared above Gams. Intrigued, Yoshio clicked on it, and the screen transformed completely. The scene shifted, revealing a younger Gams surrounded by a group of friends who were inviting him out for drinks. Gams politely declined, saying he needed to head home because his sister was waiting for him. Yoshio was taken aback, witnessing Gams during such an innocent time in his life. When Gams finally reached home, he found his father drinking heavily. Annoyed, Gams remarked, "You're drinking again," and threw a bottle at him. He then handed his father a pot of coins, which he had promised in exchange for watching over Kem while he was working. "Where's Chem?" Gams asked, his voice laced with concern. He rushed downstairs, only to find her lying in bed, looking unwell. Shocked, he asked how many days she had gone without food. Yoshio felt a similar shock, wondering if this was child abuse. Gam's anger flared as he realized the gravity of their situation. "I should have left this place sooner," he muttered, starting to walk away. His father tried to stop him, claiming he was just careless because he was drunk and assuring Gams that he would keep his promise from now on. But Gams wasn't having it. He picked up Kem and angrily told his father to move aside unless he wanted to die. "We're leaving," he declared, stepping out of the house. Kem looked up at him, asking where they were going. "Anywhere but home," he replied firmly. "But if we don't hurry, Dad will really be angry," she pointed out, her voice trembling. Gams shook his head. "We won't see him ever again, so there's no need to be scared." Kem's expression shifted, and she said, "Maybe Mom and Dad hate me because I'm a bad girl and always get scolded." "No," Gams shouted, his voice fierce. "That's not true. They're the bad ones." He reminded her of the time their parents had said they would sell her because she was bad and useless. "At least you'll be of some use in the end," he added bitterly. Yoshio realized they were living in a much worse situation than he had imagined. Gams turned to Chem, his expression softening. "Don't think of them as your parents anymore. I promise to take care of you. We'll have fun together and be happy." Kem smiled, her eyes shining with love. She hugged him tightly, whispering, "I love you, big brother." As the screen returned to the present, Yoshio finally understood why Kem had such a strong brother complex. With a brother like Gams, it was no wonder she depended on him so much. Suddenly, Gams opened his eyes and asked if he had worried his little sister. Tears streamed down Kem's face as she hugged him tightly, relieved to see him awake and speaking. The rest of the villagers appeared at the door, their faces lighting up with joy at Gams's recovery. Yoshio felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, they were all happy. He knew how much everyone depended on Gams. He was a character who naturally drew people in. Handsome and strong, Gams was the kind of person who inspired loyalty and admiration. Yoshio was confident that the bond between Chem and Gams would only grow stronger from here on out. As he reflected on his own relationship with his sister, Yoshio suddenly noticed tears streaming down his face. Shocked, he realized he was crying. A small laugh escaped him as he wondered if he regretted things so deeply that it brought him to tears. He truly wanted to change. Through the window, he saw his father and sister walking away together. Saki asked their dad if he was wearing the necklace she had given him. His father smiled and asked if it looked strange. She beamed back, telling him it suited him very well. Watching them leave, Yoshio felt a bittersweet pang in his heart. He walked over to his computer and saw Layla preparing meals with Carol's help, while the doctor and Gams were out on patrol. The sight filled him with happiness. They had set up the necessary equipment and furnishings for comfortable living. It had been 3 days since they moved into the cave, and their way of life had improved dramatically. He felt it was worth using that miracle. Meanwhile, Gams faced a large boar that charged at him. With quick reflexes, he dodged the attack just in time. Suddenly, an arrow struck the boar, knocking it out. The archer who had fired the arrow was none other than Dr. Mullis. He walked over to Gams, reminding him not to push himself too hard while he was still recovering. Yoshio checked the doctor's name and noticed there was no background information except for the name Mullis. Not only was he skilled at making potions, but he was also a master archer, making him a great partner for Gams. Additionally, Mullis could use magic to manipulate plants, and he was the one who had led them to the cave. Yoshio hoped Mullis would join the village permanently, but under the doctor's background info, there was only a box labeled secret, with no further details. It struck Yoshio as odd that Mullis had joined the group, especially after he had already spent 30,000 yen on the game. He realized that this game wasn't as straightforward as he had initially thought. After their patrol, Gams and Mullis returned to the cave, where Chem thanked them for their efforts. Carol excitedly welcomed them home, and Gams and Mullis handed over the boar meat they had just hunted. Layla was thrilled at the prospect of having meat for dinner, but she pointed out that they were running low on seasoning and salt, which were essential for cooking and preserving the meat. Yoshio found this concerning. Even though the area around the cave had an abundance of natural crops, they still needed a stable food source, like a farm. He thought about calling a peddler to buy seeds and supplies, but then a miracle called golem caught his attention. Golems were massive humanoid creatures made of rock, and he could control one directly with his controller, which excited him. However, summoning a golem would cost 700 fate points, equivalent to 70,000 yen in real money. As a NEET, Yoshio found it impossible to afford that much, especially since he had only accumulated 160 points so far. Earning 10 points daily from the villagers meant it would take him 2 to 3 months to gather enough points. He reflected on how he had already used up his savings in the game. Watching the villagers enjoy their dinner happily, Yoshio felt a bit more relaxed. He stood up from his chair to make a cup of coffee for himself, feeling a mix of contentment and worry. After preparing his coffee, he returned with a cup in hand and watched the villagers working. Yoshio noticed that Chem and Gams had been working on something together for the past few days, and he couldn't help but wonder what they were creating. Chem then announced that it was almost finished and asked Gams if it looked disrespectful. When they revealed their project, Yoshio was surprised to see it was a statue. Gams reassured Chem, saying, "What truly matters are our feelings. I'm certain our thoughts are reaching God, who is watching over us." Mullis, intrigued, asked if it was a statue of God. Chem confirmed it, explaining that although the craftsmanship was rough, they needed a place to worship and make offerings. Yoshio examined the statue closely. It was crudely carved, making it difficult to determine whether it depicted a male or female figure. He pondered the gender of the god of fate, feeling a mix of curiosity and amusement. As Chem offered some fruits to the statue, Yoshio watched in awe as the offerings vanished before their eyes. It struck him that since God existed in their world, the disappearance of offerings wasn't particularly surprising. To his delight, he noticed that his fate points had increased as a result of the offering. When he read the instructions, he discovered that offerings made to him also contributed to raising his fate points. Inspired, Yoshio decided to talk with the villagers about offering items they didn't need. However, he didn't want to burden them or come across as forceful. Instead, he revealed a prophecy to them, suggesting they could offer unnecessary items to him, explaining that he could turn their goods and thoughts into miracles. He was pleased with how he phrased it. It didn't come off as begging or demanding. The villagers seemed happy as they read the message, their faces lighting up with smiles. Yet, Yoshio felt a twinge of concern about their innocence. He thought to himself that in modern Japan, people like them might easily fall for scams or join dubious religions. Then again, he realized they might already be involved in something similar without even knowing it. The next day, Yoshio saw Gams and Rodis offering a large log to him. He was struck by the realization that they could offer even big items like that. It warmed his heart to see how happy they seemed while making offerings to their god. As the villagers prayed and gave their offerings together, he noticed it was already past noon. Time had flown by while he played the game. Suddenly, his mother called out, saying he had received a parcel. He hurried downstairs, thinking it might be some reference material the Village of Fate had forgotten to send earlier. As he mumbled to himself, his mother, curious about what he was saying, opened the parcel before he could stop her. "Don't open it so casually," he exclaimed, wondering what could be inside. When she opened it, they found strange-looking fruits inside. They resembled bears, but were red like apples. Yoshio couldn't believe his eyes. These were the exact fruits the villagers had offered him the day before. His mother, thinking they were some exotic fruits, declared they would eat them for dessert that evening. As he caught the scent of the fruits, he noticed a faint citrus aroma that didn't seem artificial at all. Remembering how much the villagers enjoyed them, he decided to take a bite. To his surprise, it was the most delicious fruit he had ever tasted. He figured it might be a thoughtful touch from the game's creators, or perhaps just a common fruit from some foreign country. Either way, he wasn't complaining, especially since he got to enjoy something so tasty. Feeling satisfied, he returned to his computer and wrote a new prophecy for the villagers. In it, he thanked them for the fruits and assured them that they didn't need to offer food unless they had extra. He reminded them to prioritize themselves first. Smiling, he thought about how once he saved up enough points to obtain a golem, he would be able to help them even more. Suddenly, his mother shouted for him to come downstairs, and from her tone, he could tell she was a bit irritated. He hurried down and was stunned to see a log at the door, stamped with the symbol of the Village of Fate. His mother asked what he was planning to do with it, but he was completely taken aback. It was the same log the villagers had offered him the day before. Yoshio thought to himself that the joke about the log was going too far. He tried to drag it, but quickly realized just how heavy it was. His mother, eyeing the log with curiosity, asked what he planned to do with it. He told her he was going to move it to the garden, pretending she had asked him to use it for muscle training. As he struggled with the weight, he couldn't help but think about how hard Gams and Rotus must work with such heavy labor. He found it hard to take the situation seriously and briefly considered filing a complaint with the game company. However, when he checked the details, he couldn't find a contact number. The return address indicated Hokkaido, which shocked him. He couldn't believe they would go so far as to send something like that from Hokkaido. Searching online for information about the company yielded nothing. He even looked up the address from the package on his laptop and found a small building, which made him doubt that such a tiny company could produce a game of this quality. He started to think that the actual development might have taken place somewhere else, but the company was so secretive. Either way, he couldn't afford to travel there, nor did he have the guts to confront them in person. So, he sat there, wondering what he should do with the log. The next day, he received a cooler from the villagers, and inside was fresh meat from a monster they had killed. He was completely shocked, and his mom was equally surprised when she saw it. Angrily, she asked if he was spending money on something shady. Unsure how to explain, he tried to tell her that he had come up with an idea to help revitalize a village, and the villagers appreciated it so much that they started sending him gifts regularly. To his surprise, she got excited and thought it was amazing. He was even more shocked that she believed him. He handed her the boar meat and suggested she cook it. She stared at the meat, baffled, and wondered how on earth she could prepare something like that. Since then, he started receiving daily packages from the Village of Fate, which included various fruits, monster meats, and even crystals used as light sources in the game. He also kept getting more logs, and began to wonder if it was possible to buy these items from somewhere. He developed a theory. Maybe this game was designed for wealthy people, where valuable items were gradually sent as tributes to players. Perhaps he had been selected as a test player by mistake. One evening, his mom made a satay dish with the meat they had received. As they sat at the dinner table, she asked if he could get more of those fruits, because she felt healthier after eating them. He promised to ask the villagers about it. His sister, Saoki, even chimed in, saying she liked the meat. His dad added that the meat was really delicious, with a more natural flavor than what they usually bought from stores. He remarked that it had a texture and taste that made it feel like real quality meat. Seeing his dad talk about it so enthusiastically reassured Yoshio that he truly enjoyed the food, which was rare for him. The next day, Yoshio was in the garden trying to cut wood with a saw. His father watched as he struggled, clearly finding it difficult. "Want me to show you how to do it properly?" his dad offered. Yoshio suspected his father was helping him, because he didn't want the neighbors to see him struggling and get embarrassed. After demonstrating the proper technique, his father handed the saw back and told him to try again. From that point on, his father started giving him advice regularly. Last weekend, they even made plans together to use the logs to repair the garden fence. Yoshio also began thinking about how he could teach the villagers to cook meat. His mother had taught him a lot about cooking, so he had become somewhat decent at it. It had even become a routine for him to have lunch together with the villagers in the evenings. While looking for something in the fridge one day, his sister suddenly came home. Hesitantly, he greeted her, and she was surprised to hear him speak, replying that she was glad to be back. Later, sitting in his room, he reflected on how he was able to talk to his family more now, all thanks to the Village of Fate. Yoshio began to wonder if he was truly helping the villagers or if they were, in fact, helping him. Meanwhile, Gams had built a sturdy fence around the cave to ensure their safety. After finishing the fence, Kem asked her brother if monsters could jump over it. Gams reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, if any do get over, I'll handle them." He added that the only real issue was the number of enemies, like last time, so there was no point in stressing about it. He then suggested they head inside. Yoshio observed that they seemed more confident about their defenses now, but something felt off. Despite their improved situation, everyone appeared tense. They were trying to act calm, but their restlessness was evident. He noticed their eyes darting toward the wooden calendar, where the last day of the month was marked. He wondered if something special was set to happen on that day. During dinner, Carol asked why everyone looked so gloomy. Rhodus replied, "Mama and Papa are doing well and are always affectionate with each other." But Carol pointed out that everyone sighed whenever they glanced at the calendar. Rhodus admitted they didn't want her to worry and asked if she remembered how they always told her to stay inside on the last day of the month and go to bed early. She nodded, recalling how the adults always had scared faces and got easily angry on that day. But if there are so many gods, why is it only the 7 gods? And why are there 12 months in the year? Shouldn't there be 5 more gods? Rhodus smiled at her observant nature and explained, the 7 gods were originally responsible for the 7 days of the week, representing light, moon, fire, water, nature, lightning, and earth. Yoshio realized that their world had a similar system, with their Monday to Sunday linked to those elements. Understanding this helped him grasp the purpose of his position as one of the gods. Rhodus continued, recounting the history of the gods. He explained that there had been conflicts among them, leading to a massive battle. The first 31 days of this battle were marked by devastating freezing winds. On the 120th day, the god of nature emerged as the strongest. On the 182nd day, the gods of water and lightning fought fiercely against each other. Then, on the 243rd day, the god of fire exploded with rage. It took a full 365 days for the gods to stop fighting. As a result of this long conflict, the faction of the gods that emerged victorious came to this world, becoming responsible for the 7 days of the week and the periods during which they thrived. They were known as the 7 chief gods. Carol asked what happened to the gods who lost. Rhodus explained that the defeated gods were considered evil and banished to the depths of the earth. However, they continued to gather strength and reappeared once a month, lending their powers to monsters. This event occurred on the last day of the month, known as Evil God's Temptation. Kem added that this was why it was dangerous to go outside on that final day. The monsters' powers grew, turning them wicked. Yoshio finally understood why there was a cross marked on the last day of the month. He noticed there were 10 days left until that marked day. Just like in the real world where it was November 20th, the game also indicated the 20th date, with 10 days remaining until the end of the month. He thought about how, with the amount of fate points he currently had, he probably wouldn't be able to protect the villagers. As midnight approached, he saw Rhodus sitting alone at the table, deep in thought. Layla appeared and asked him what was wrong. He confided in her, "I can't stop thinking about Evil God's temptation." He mentioned the same attack from last time and expressed his worry about losing his family. Seeing Rhodus tremble so much, Yoshio wondered what had happened during the last Evil God's temptation 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, Carol was sleeping in her bed when she suddenly woke up, feeling restless. She ran to find her mom and dad, who were busy working in the kitchen. "Wash your face," her mom instructed, and Carol hurried to the well. As she splashed water on her face, she found it refreshing, but realized she had forgotten to bring a towel. Just then, Kem appeared and asked if she had just woken up. Carol nodded and asked, "Where's our big brother?" Kem replied, "He's keeping watch at the village gates." Carol's face fell. "If Big Brother isn't there, I don't care," she exclaimed, running off. Kem didn't like that attitude, but when she saw Carol sprinting away, she tried to stop her. Carol dashed back home, calling out, "Did you hear Kem's voice?" Kem told her she didn't know and then started eating breakfast. After finishing her meal, Carol bolted outside. Her mom asked where she was going, but Carol replied, "I'm going to find my big brother." Her mother tried to stop her, but Carol ran off without listening. As she made her way through the market, she greeted the people around her. Someone asked if Theodos and Layla were home, and she answered them before continuing on her way. Suddenly, she spotted a big wall and finally saw Gams nearby. She ran towards him and hugged him tightly. "Carol, you shouldn't be out here today," Gams said, concern etched on his face. "Why not?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's a special day," he explained, pointing out that no other kids were around. She nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Did you build this big wall?" she asked. Gams shook his head. "No, this wall was built after a massive war several decades ago. It served as a stronghold. After the war, refugees moved in and prospered in this town." "Does the wall protect them from enemies?" Carol wondered. Gams agreed just as their mom appeared, calling out to them. "Carol, stop running," she said, her voice firm. A soldier approached Gams and asked if he knew them. Gams replied that they were their neighbors and had always been kind to him and his sister. The soldier's subordinate pointed out that the children didn't seem to have the slightest fear. Gams explained, "Ever since the town was established, it's been a fact that these walls have never been breached." Layla apologized for her daughter's interruption and promised to scold her later. But Gams urged her to be a bit more moderate. After that, they moved on from there. Once they reached home, Carol asked if something special was happening that day, like a festival. Layla replied, "It would have been nice if it was a festival, but we can have a feast tomorrow instead." Carol's face lit up at the thought. However, Rhodus and Layla exchanged worried glances. Rhodus, looking out the window, said, "I've packed everything in the wagon just in case." Layla nodded, and Rhodus added, "It would be great if nothing happened. Let's pray we can get through the day without any problems." Outside, however, the situation was dire. There were many monsters, far more than usual. And this time, different types had formed a group, all attacking at once. Gams and his subordinates fought back, shooting at the monsters with spears and arrows. One of Gam's subordinates ordered everyone to follow Gam's lead, stressing that they must not let the monsters enter the town. But suddenly, a monster leaped over the wall and attacked a soldier. Shock rippled through the crowd as more monsters began jumping over the wall and into the city. Chaos erupted throughout the village. Inside their home, Rhodus, Layla, and Carol huddled together, frightened and hugging each other tightly as the situation spiraled out of control. Just then, Gams and Kem appeared at their home, asking if everyone was all right. They confirmed that they were fine, and Gams told them not to worry. Both Gams and Kem were covered in blood, Gams from fighting monsters and Kem from healing the injured. Rhodus, his voice filled with concern, asked how the battle was going. Gams admitted, "It's not looking good. It seems hopeless." He explained that the gates had been breached, and a swarm of monsters was flooding into the town. Realizing the danger, he urged his family to flee. "Get to safety," Gams insisted, his determination unwavering. Rhodus, standing tall, informed him, "The wagon is ready with several boxes of supplies." They all climbed into the wagon, and as it started moving, Gams provided protection. Just as some monsters appeared, Gams quickly told Rhodus to get back on the wagon. He struck down the monsters with swift precision before joining them as the wagon sped off. As they escaped, Gams informed them that a portion of the town's northwestern wall had collapsed, which might provide a way out. Rhodus was shocked to see the entire town engulfed in flames, destruction everywhere. Tears streamed down his face as he watched their once beautiful town reduced to ruins. After they escaped, Carol turned to her mother, asking, "Will we be able to return home?" With sadness in her eyes, her mother replied, "We probably can't, but new experiences await us in other places." Kem smiled, adding, "I'm certain we survived thanks to divine protection. The god of fate is guiding us." Later that day, a courier arrived at Yoshio's house and handed him a small parcel.